Well, hello and welcome to the West Texas Legislative Summit held on the campus of Angelo State University here in San Angelo, Texas. My name is Joe Hyde, publisher of San Angelo Live, and I have a very special guest today. I have President Donald Trump's former medical advisor or physician?
Both.
Congressman Ronny Jackson. You know, the first time I learned about you and saw Trump interacting with you was on the border in McAllen last month. Like it was last month when we were down there. He spent one of the interesting things that people don't see from the regular news media, and of course, on this Facebook video, we're going to try to get Facebook to ban it. If we can do that, then it's good. But one of the interesting things about Trump and his interactions with you is like, he spent 15 minutes talking about stories and stuff like that of how the news media said that he was too fat and all that kind of thing, and not in shape, and you came forward and said no, he's in good shape, and you talk about the board, but Trump had a genuine connection to most of the Republican congressmen, and you could tell from that meeting that y'all had. It was just the news media and you guys, and you don't see that side of Trump. You just hear that he's an evil guy.
He's a great guy. I mean, you're right. It's a perfect example of the difference between him and Biden right now. I mean, he's sharp as a tack. You saw up there.
Right.
He had a whole host of congressmen there. There were 20 or 30 of us there.
Off his head, he told a story about each one of them.
Everybody. He knew something about every single person there. Knew them by name. Knew a family member. Knew some special story about their district or something that had happened. And he wasn't prepped for that. It just like he does that off the top of his head. He's very mentally with it, and physically he's in fantastic shape too. And it's just a sharp contrast to what we got right now in the White House, to be honest with you.
Well, you're a doctor, and what we have in the White House and this malaise is kind of dropping on over the country, and it really impacts me too because I'm a small business,
right? And
I'm kind of the canary in the cage because I sell advertising, right? So what's the first thing they're going to cut when COVID destroys their business? It's going to be advertising. Right. So I see the struggles. Actually, I feel the struggles really bad, and now we have this Delta variant. What is the end game on this Delta variant thing? The Delta variant COVID infection that's going on right now, we're getting 100, 120 cases a day in San Angelo, and then everyone's running for the hills.
Well, look, I don't minimize COVID at all. COVID was a big deal when it first came out. It's a serious disease. It killed some people. It still has the capability to kill people if they're in the right category. If you're elderly, if you're immunocompromised, if you have a lot of comorbidities, you should take it pretty serious. But the vaccine that we have, thanks to Donald J. Trump in the Warp Speed program, we wouldn't even have a vaccine if it weren't for Donald Trump and his aggressive nature and the way he approached this. The vaccines that we have right now are protective. I mean, like 90-something%, maybe as high as 95, 96% protective from getting COVID, and so and that includes the Delta variant. And this Delta variant's come out. It's supposedly more infectious, which I don't argue with that. Probably is, but you're still protected with the vaccine for the most part. The very, very few people that are vaccinated are getting this, and there are some breakthrough infections. But the people that get the breakthrough infections aren't getting anything. They're getting minor cold and flu symptoms. That's the extent of it, right? So that is not a reason to start locking this country down again and start pushing these mass mandates out.
What about the we here in San Angelo just uses the macroeconomic model for the world. It's 100,000 people. 40,000 have received the vaccine, and these aren't cumulative numbers, but some of those 40,000 that have been vaccinated also have had it. We had 17,000 have it. So I'm thinking about 50% of this.
On the surface of this virus, and we made a vaccine for it, right, for the spike protein. If you've got the virus in a natural fashion and you got natural immunity from it, you have antibodies to all kinds of proteins, not just the spike protein, all of these proteins that make up this virus. So your immunity is probably much, much higher, and probably lifetime immunity as well. We don't know the answer to that yet because it hasn't been around long enough, but there are a lot of indications it might be lifetime immunity if you've got it. And I would say the number's even higher than you quoted. I would say nationwide, probably 80% of everyone in this country either is immune to it from having the vaccine or has natural immunity from having had the virus.
But we don't even talk about natural immunity.
We don't, because that's not in the best interest of the Biden administration and the Democrats right now. They want to do it one more time. This COVID crisis worked so well for them. Joe Biden wouldn't be in the White House right now without it, and we wouldn't have lost the Senate without it. And they know that. It worked really well for them. They need to keep that fire burning. They need to keep this going for at least one more cycle. They want it to impact the 2022 midterm elections. They want to make sure that they don't lose the Senate, and they want to limit their losses in the House, and they don't want to do any damage to the White House. So, and they have lots of members. Mind you, people are thinking, well, I've been talking about how they're spinning this up again for political reasons, because they want their number one goal with this virus. They need to be able to justify unsolicited mail-in ballots all over this country. Right. That's how they're going to steal another election.
Now, have you been looking at the polling of the various issues for the Democrat Party?
Yeah. The polling's horrible, right?
So the polling's horrible. So they need to have this emergency continue so they can, convince, I guess, county registrars to send out ballots. And
let me point this out, too. People are saying, well, your argument about them spinning it up for unsolicited ballots is a little bit early in the process, because we're just coming into the primary season, right? The general election's still a year away, but it's not too early. There are a lot of Democrats right now that work for Nancy Pelosi that have been buying into this garbage, right, and been propagating this stuff about the virus. They're super vulnerable in their districts to other Democrats that haven't been buying into it, that are going to run against them and primary them. They can't afford to lose any of their own right now. Nancy Pelosi needs all her soldiers that are going to have her back in there. She doesn't need these Democrats coming in that are going to undermine what they're doing. So a lot of this will be so they can salvage their own, keep their Democrats from being primary.
So the Democrats in power are trying to maintain their power from an insurgent Democrat. Are these insurgent Democrats? Are they leftist, Marxist? Are they liberals?
They're a variety. They're people that are running on the fact that the Democrats had led us down the wrong road with this vaccine or with this virus, and with the mask mandates and the talk about mandated vaccines and things of that nature. So they're running opposite of what the Democrats that are in there right now are pushing out. But Nancy Pelosi wants to keep all of her Democrats in there, because that's how they are going to continue to make gains and to continue to propagate all of the nonsense that they're pushing out right now with this voter reform. They call it voter reform, but it's basically just efforts to take future elections.
All right. I'm going to walk it back a little bit, but since you are a doctor and you're in policy, one of the biggest things in the small local markets that people want to know is, obviously we have public schools, and these public schools are kind of like the anchors of all these little communities out here. You know that from being in Amarillo. They want to know, are my kids going to have to are they going to be able to be in the classroom? And if they are, they're going to have to wear masks.
Look, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, this makes my blood boil, honestly. The teachers union in this country is the public enemy number one right now. They do not have everything they're doing is not in the best interest of our kids. Now, I know there are a lot of really good teachers out there that even belong to these teachers unions, because you almost have to belong to them now, or you just can't exist. You can't work. Right. And that's a problem with the way it's set up. But the stuff that they're pushing out right now, and the control that they have of the Biden administration, I'm telling you right now, I'm going to lose my mind if they start trying to mandate vaccines for our kids. Our kids don't need these vaccines.
So the proposal out there right now is, I think we can vaccine down to 12 years old.
Right? That alone is ridiculous.
All right.
12-year-olds don't need.
They're saying going all the way down to 5 years old.
That's insane, right? We don't know. This is a vaccine that's being used. I won't call it experimental because it's a little beyond that, but it's being used under emergency use authorization. It does not have full FDA approval yet. It's been done with brand new technology, with the mRNA technology, which I think it's a safe vaccine. I took it. My parents took it. I had my sister take it, who's a renal transplant patient and who is immunocompromised. I think it's a safe vaccine, but we don't have a lot of data on it. But what we do know is that our kids don't get sick from it. Most of them don't get it. If they do get it, they have minor symptoms. They don't get sick from the COVID. They don't get sick from COVID. Right. So everything that we do related to this vaccine should be based on risk-benefit. And every individual is going to have a different risk-benefit ratio. So, and our kids, the risk is much higher than a benefit of potentially getting this vaccine.
The risk of getting the vaccine.
Because we don't know what it does to kids, and there's no reason for us to try to find out. Kids don't need it.
What about masking kids in school?
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Teachers should get the vaccines if they want them, and the kids, we don't need to mask. Once you get the vaccine, you should forget about this, right? You should forget about it. You should go on about your life.
What if you've had the thing?
If you've had it, forget about it. Go on about your life.
All right. That's the first time. You're the first time I've heard a doctor say I have more immunity or better immunity than the vaccine.
Yeah, there's a study out there. I think it might be an Israeli study. I can't remember where it came from, but I just saw it the other day. 6 times. They're saying potentially That's 6 times the level of protection.
All right, policy-wise, or not policy, politics-wise, how are the Republicans going to take back the House?
Well, we're just going to let Joe Biden keep doing what Joe Biden does. It's going to happen on its own. I mean, people are, I don't know how many people voted for him in the last election. It wasn't what they
81
said.
million.
Yeah, well, I don't think so.
You don't think 81 million voted?
No, I don't think so.
So the last election was stolen.
So, yeah, absolutely. I tell people this all the time. They get so infuriated when you talk about, like, they'll be like, well, Joe Biden got more votes than Donald Trump did, which he didn't, but they'll say this, right? And then they'll talk about the number of votes he got. And so I'll just break it down. I'll say, well, okay, so you're telling me, let me just make sure I got this right. You're saying that Joe Biden got 20 million more votes than Barack Obama? Right? Barack Obama could fill stadiums. He was a rock star, right? Joe Biden couldn't get 5 people to show up in a parking lot.
Right.
And we're supposed to believe that he got more votes than Obama did?
All right. So here's one more question on the politics side. When I was down in McAllen, I was sitting in that glorious FBO and there at McAllen Airport and waiting on all these jets to leave because they wouldn't refuel our plane until the jets left. Right. And I was talking to these multi-billionaires. They're all sitting there, and I didn't know they were billionaires, but if they're all drinking coffee, I'm drinking coffee. We're having a nice conversation, and one of them just started going off about the voter fraud. He said, "If the Republicans don't figure this voter fraud thing out, why do we need to give any money to any Republican candidate or the Republican Party? Because the Republican Party just lets elections get stolen from it." So he was basically saying we got to find something in Georgia or Arizona or Pennsylvania. And so he thought that something would happen. What do you say on that?
Well, there's still states that are doing audits, and one thing may lead to another, and there may be a snowball effect at some point. I don't know. I'm not counting on that. I think that our next best chance is to get the House back in 2022. And I understand people are disgruntled and people are discouraged based on what happened. Mm-hmm. But quitting won't be the answer. I promise you. That's what the Democrats would love to see happen. We got to get back in the fight. We got to give this one more chance. We've got to get our state legislatures all over this country to reform the voter laws and make sure that we don't have rogue county commissioners and voting authorities and governors or whoever, people that aren't legally constitutionally they're not legally people that can manipulate our elections. That's what happened last time, right? Mm-hmm. The United States Constitution clearly says that the state legislature and only the state legislatures can determine the time, the conduct, and so on and so forth.
But you said you had bureaucrats doing it.
We had bureaucrats doing it everywhere, and they got away with it. Right? We can't let that happen again, right? And the Democrats would love to do that. The Democrats want to go a step beyond that. They have H.R. 1, this voter reform bill. They call it For the People Act. It's For the Corrupt Politicians Act is what it is. But it's H.R. 1 because it was their number one priority in Congress, both the House and the Senate.
What are the chances the Senate breaks the filibuster and passes it?
Well, we're hanging all of our hopes on Joe Manchin right now. If Joe Manchin stands his ground, I told somebody the other day, I said every day I go to bed and I pray Joe Manchin stands his ground, And I saw on the ticker the next day on TV, Congressman Jackson prays for Senator Manchin. Right. But it's true. Right now he's the only thing stopping it. He and Christian Sinema and a couple others that are stopping it from happening. If they get rid of the filibuster, we're done. Because if they get rid of the filibuster, they're going to push everything through, all this garbage, including H.R. 1. H.R. 1 makes unsolicited mail-in ballots the law of the land, right? It makes ballot harvesting legal. This is unbelievable. It makes voter ID illegal, right? It makes any form of signature verification illegal. And this is the crazy part. It puts in place a 6-to-1 federal match for low-dollar contributions, which is a huge advantage to the Democrats, which have more low-dollar donations. Right. So for every donation that you make to a member of Congress,
AOC gets what, $1,200 for every $200?
That's right. You give AOC $200. The federal government will put $1,200 of our tax dollars into her coffers to run her socialist campaign.
What happens after she retires from Congress? She get to keep all that money?
She gets to keep all that money and give it to any candidate she wants.
All right. So you're an Aggie like me.
Yep.
I have to ask your opinion on that. Yep. On this, Texas in the SEC. What do you think?
I don't like it. I don't like it. I think, that
don't you remember
they had an opportunity to go later on and they were worried about their network and everything else. Their opportunity passed, right? We are the SEC team in Texas and we need to keep it that way. But it sounds like it's a done deal. So we'll just have to beat them on the football field routinely.
So I guess we're probably going to have a pretty good season. A&M will have a pretty good season this year. Yeah. And of course, we're not going to play them. It's not till 2025 when this happens.
Yeah.
So, and we'll have to contend with the Longhorn Network.
Let's put them in the SEC West and see how they compete.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right? Exactly. Anyway, this has been Ronny Jackson, Congressman from Amarillo, and my name is Joe Hyde. This is San Angelo Live, and we are at the West Texas Legislative Summit, sponsored by the San Angelo Chamber of Commerce at Angelo State University. We'll be back in a little bit.